This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Sit down, grab some popcorn, because this is going to be a long one. I apologize ahead of time. In this video, I am working on starting Jinx's rocket launcher in the ulti form. To start off, I am patterning out all of the pieces that I will need for this, and when I pattern stuff out, I really just kind of wing it and perfect it as I go along. These patterns are available on my store Envy if you just want to skip this step and have the patterns ready to go. I'm transferring a majority of these patterns onto 6mm EVA foam, but there are some different sections that you'll see as we go along that will be on 2 or 3mm EVA foam. I can't remember the exact measurements, but it was, one of the thinner versions that you buy in like packages at Walmart. I'm not going to show me cutting out all of the pieces because that would just take way too long, and this video is already long enough. So we're moving on to the next part. What I'm doing here is cutting or breaking down the pattern pieces for the wings, cutting that out, and then tracing that onto the wings that I have cut out here in EVA foam. This is just going to give me a guideline on where to score the EVA foam so that I can open it up and create these grooves later. So tracing that on with a marker, then I'm going to take a box cutter, score those lines, and hit it with the heat gun in a second. This is also going to help me get the top layers for the wings towards the bottom section or inner section of the wings where it has like another upper layer to it. You'll see as we piece this together. So here I am going ahead and drilling down at an angle, like beveling the edges of the pieces that will become the stars. I'm creating this bevel because it will help the star take a shape that I want it to take later. And I'm also going ahead and just cleaning up the outer edges of the star now, because that is easier to do now rather than when it's glued together and you have all these weird points and shapes that the Dremel just can't fit into anymore. Once I've hit all of those pieces with a Dremel, I am going ahead and gluing it together. To start off, I'm gluing the 2 halves of each point together before gluing all the points together, if that makes any sense. So right here, what we're creating is 1 point of the star, and it's broken up into 2 halves because I need it to have this shape to it that you see created here, where it's like angled and points upwards. Once I've glued all the points together, I am gluing them to each other. 5 points makes a star. The edges where the points attach to each other are beveled or at an angle so that it points downwards, as you can see here, rather than upwards like the center of the points do. It may look funny for a while even when you've started attaching that last point. Don't fear, it will turn out fine and normal looking as soon as you glue the last point to the first point. Everything will look fine and star-shaped, and it might flip the wrong way. All you have to do is press it back down and it will flip the right way. Here I'm hitting the main body of the rocket launcher with a heat gun. This is just to help close all those pores, and I'm also going to shape it as well. Remember those scores we created earlier on the wings? This is where it comes into play. I'm hitting it with a heat gun and opening those scores right up, and it creates these nice clean grooves. While I'm doing this, I am also going ahead and shaping the wings into the shape that I want it to be, just to have a bit more curve and like wave to it. To create the base for the body, I'm just tracing the part that we just created and curved onto EVA foam, making sure it's like a fairly even rectangle and cutting that out. It's a really simple shape. Going back to those star pieces from earlier, because that's what I decided to work on next, I am just gluing those on top of each other. There are 2 star pieces of equal sizes glued on top of one another, and then the smallest star piece is glued on top of that. So that is what I'm doing here, just gluing everything down. I glued it down on the center and then at the end of each point, rather than just cover the entire thing in glue. So her rocket launcher has a bunch of lining or edging around it that's just like rectangle or rectangular shaped, and that's what I'm creating here. I'm just winging it. I have no real measurement or anything that I'm following. I'm just cutting out things that look to be about the same width and going with that, and it turned out okay. Taking those rectangular strips that we just cut out, I am gluing that around the edge of the stars that we just put together. I'm just gluing it one point at a time, just because I found this the easiest way to apply it rather than try to make it all one continuous strand all the way around the star. I'm also gluing the base onto the main body of the rocket launcher. I don't have a lot of footage of this though because it was kind of hard to get it all on camera, but you get the idea. Just glue one edge to one edge and then the other edge to the other edge. I'm also gluing the top layer onto the body as well, because there are 2 layers on the body of the rocket launcher. I created this groove in the back of this section that goes behind the stars and put a whole bunch of hot glue in that and then folded it so that it would have this pointy shape to it, and then I'm just gluing that on to the back of the stars into place. There's a lot of hot glue used on this because I needed to make sure everything was going to stick together well, so I just put globs and globs of hot glue on everything. Before moving on, I had to go through and finish dremeling down and smoothing out the edges of all the remaining pieces because they needed to be smoothed out before I glued them into place. Otherwise, it would just be impossible to reach these edges. The Dremel just wouldn't fit. Here I'm gluing on the top layer of the wings to the wings. And to help hot glue to stick, I create this crosshatch pattern, kind of similar to how we did the scoring, but just a lot more messy and all over the place. In any area that the hot glue is going to need to adhere to something, or any area that's going to be attached to something else, this just kind of helps the hot glue stick better. So the next piece I'm working on is this giant base piece that goes behind the entire front section of her rocket launcher, like the star piece and wings rest on this piece. That's what I'm creating here. And it's going to end up really thick, but I also needed it to have this curve to it, so I'm doing that before applying any of the other layers. This works similar to how we did the piece that goes behind the stars earlier, where I just create this groove in the foam, put a whole bunch of hot glue in it, and then fold it and wait for the hot glue to dry. And then it will have this nice little sharper bend to it. Next up is adding the layers to this piece. So the second layer is made with, I think it was like 2mm EVA foam, or the normal craft foam you find in any store that sells crafting appliances. It's the thinnest one. Then I glued on the third and fourth layer, which were both the same thickness as the base layer, the 6mm 6mm EVA foam. Then I hit that piece with a Dremel to smooth out those edges and make sure everything is nice and even. Going back to the body of the rocket launcher, I'm just gluing on one final side piece. It's this long little bit that kind of like comes off and does some like pretty little wavy shape, and that's really all that it is. I'm also attaching wings to the back of the star, and this took a lot of hot glue to make sure that it was secured and in place and wasn't going to fall off. I also had to make this tube shape to glue onto the back of my star, just because this is the only way I was going to be able to have it fit or sit correctly onto that giant back piece that we just made, because the wings kind of flare out at a certain shape and it needs some bit of gap in between the pieces. So once I have the tube attached to the back of the star with a lot of hot glue, I am now attaching it to the base piece, also with a lot of hot glue. I glue the wings onto this base piece as well, just for some extra security. I wanted to make sure that nothing was going to fall apart. So I needed to create these support beams, kind of, sort of. They're not really there so much for the sport, but I needed to create these so that when I attached the head piece of the rocket launcher that we just put together to the main body of the rocket launcher, it would have something to attach to, because just attaching it around the edges wasn't going to be enough or be strong enough. So I created this makeshift support system out of thicker pieces of EVA foam and glued that all together. And then I also stuck in a bunch of toothpicks just for some extra security and found that this helped a lot. So I plan out and try to figure out where I want this to go, add a bunch of hot glue onto the support beams and the edges of the body, and then shove that into or onto the front section of the rocket launcher. And as you can see, some toothpicks even go straight through this piece, and I'll have to like cut those off later. But right now my main focus is just getting it all together, and it stuck pretty well doing that. Here I am hitting what's going to be the shoulder piece and the handle with a heat gun and just kind of helping shaping everything. So for the shoulder piece, I'm creating this kind of wide bend that will fit around my shoulder. And then for the handles, I'm rolling that so that they're more tube shaped, and then we'll be gluing those together. Taking a long strip of 2mm EVA foam, I'm just adding on a small detail that is on the handle, which is just this like kind of edging around it, and gluing that into place. So I glued the shoulder piece directly onto the underneath part of the rocket launcher, like the body of it, where I felt it would rest on my shoulder. Like I held it up to myself, figured out where I wanted to place it, then glued that on. I also shoved a couple of toothpicks in there just for some added security, and put a bit of hot glue at the top so that it wasn't like going to stab me or anything. I also stuck a bunch of toothpicks into the handle piece, and then shove that into the foam after adding some hot glue to make sure that everything would stick. I coated the entire thing with about 3 layers of wood glue, and then sprayed on this gap-filling sandable spray paint just as a sort of primer. And then I'm now applying Bondo's gap filler to all of the remaining gaps where I don't want there to be gaps, and then I'll sand that down so that everything will be all nice and smooth. And now we're moving on to painting. So when I first painted it, it was super last minute, like on the drive, like in the car on the way to the convention. It was so last minute, guys. So the paint job turned out horrible the first time around because it was sloppy and rushed. You'll be able to tell a little bit better here in the future when we do the white, because you'll see exactly where I went all out of the lines with the gold and stuff. So anyways, I'm just repainting that. I'm painting the trim gold, the pieces that are supposed to be white, like this top layer on the body and some of the wings white, and then most of it is black. And then the front star is pink, and that'll finish this up. I just want to note here that the first time I painted this, this is not what this looked like. The white was not that sloppy. I had already gone back over this piece with the white paint around the edges and didn't care about getting it out of the line since I knew I was just going to repaint over it with the pink. Just wanted to make you like let everyone know it was not that sloppy, I promise, guys. It was still kind of sloppy looking though. And that's it for this video. The thing is finished. I hope you guys found this video helpful or enjoyed it, and it will be useful in some way to you in the future. Good luck if you are making your own. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos if you want to see other cosplay tutorials, and stick around if you want to see future ones. I will also have a makeup tutorial for Jinx, Stargate Jinx specifically, coming soon, so be sure to stick around for that too. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day.